always been a wonky go.
Okay, thank you very much.
All those elevated greens. Oh,
Okay, now how do I move the screen? Move this screen?
Click. And then you should be able to just go left and right with your arrow keys.
It does work. See?
That works.
Okay, guys, we're playing with something new tonight because we're having this Zoom meeting in my office rather than at City Hall because it's in a great state of flux. The mayor's moved out, HR moved out. I don't know what else is over there. It's just a mess. So we decided to do it over here where it was easy. So
Is there a big
Move,
party?
it
after
sounds like a
everyone moved
marital
out?
dispute. Yeah.
not yet. I don't know that the big party's gonna be, they're gonna tear it down to the studs.
Well, that's what you should do at the big party on there, is tear the walls up.
We're staying out of it, whatever. We moved over here, got away from the problem a long time ago.
Your office is bigger.
It is. I'm kind of spoiled. I don't think my new office is gonna be this big either, but anyway. Okay, anybody got any comments they want to make before we get started?
How did July go?
It went well.
Okay.
It went very well. For as long agendas we had, it really went pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have any.
I'm sure it was more efficient since Roy was leading it.
It would have been much more efficient if Kevin.
Yeah, we won't get into that. So who's more efficient, but anyway, we got through it. Okay, we're gonna talk about commercial districts tonight, start the discussion about open space and then have a few closing comments. Rick's got kind of a little short presentation of what they did when they went on their trip to look at different locations and talk about form-based codes. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll send you this PowerPoint so that you can click on those things. The new design for Highway 112 is out. I can say that they did make some of the changes that we asked them to. The distance between the roundabouts at Harbor and there was one at Barrington and now it's moved down to Sabatini, which helps a lot of that. They did shift it enough to the west to not get into that house in the subdivision. That's right after you get past the commercial stuff. They didn't take the curve out. And the question has been asked, why didn't they take the curve out? And the answer was, well, they didn't want to have to acquire anything else to do that. So we're going to go back and talk about that. There's just no reason not to take that curve out. I think one storage building being sacrificed is not too much to ask for a better operating system. The other major issue is there is the side path on the west side that is the 12-foot side path. But when you get to the bridge going over the 412 bypass, it narrows down to 6 feet. That's really not acceptable. It doesn't meet AASHTO standards as far as that's concerned. And we'll be working with the highway department to see if they can't do that. Their answer is, well, that bridge wasn't designed for a 12-foot side path on it, but that's really not our problem. They can hang one out to the side if they need to. But anyway, those are the two comments we'll probably be making. If you look at the Cave Springs portion, there's some issues. I'm going to go to the west of Cave Springs. There's still two options left in Elm Springs, whether it will go down the existing location or it will go to the east of that.
If you click on,
I'm sorry,
if you click on those
Oh.
links, it'll take you.
I don't have to talk. I just don't have to just be talking about it.
Okay.
Go ahead and hit OK.
Okay. Oh, it's going to come up over here. So how to get over there? Okay, you run the equipment. I'll just talk.
That's
How about
fine.
that? That works even better. That works even better. I can talk. That part I do know how to do. Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna zoom out a little bit more here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna zoom back out.
They didn't extend it any further south than they originally started at the intersection at 412. The city of Tawnytown has been trying to get them to extend it as far enough south to catch the new road that's going out to the school, but highway department hasn't budged any. You can see that they added that roundabout there at
Your mouse does not like me.
My mouse does not like me either, so you can see where it goes around, missed the house, lines up with a roundabout at Harbor. There is some discussion from Tiny Town. They would like to reroute Barrington and have it just come into that. They want the highway department to do that, and the highway department's not really agreeable to doing that yet. If you go further on to the north, you'll see the next roundabout is a
Is that the curve? I'm
realignment.
sorry, is that the curve you were talking about right there?
Yeah, take that curve out right there and come straight across instead of. Now, they say it will meet the design criteria if it stays that way, but if you drive out there very much, it's kind of a sharp curve. Maybe it's a traffic calming device, you know. Move the next one to where a realignment of Sabatini. And then when you get down to Elm Springs, this is the alternative that goes through the existing right of way. I mean, where it is now, to me, that's gonna wipe out what's down through there by the time you widen it out through there. They did add a roundabout at Marchant and Carrie Smith, which that was one of the things we asked for because I can't imagine why they didn't, yeah. I can't imagine why they didn't put one in there to start with, but they put a roundabout at that location.
That helps as far as Shaw and all that.
Yeah, the park and Shaw Elementary and Ecclesia and all that that's going in. Like I said, they don't have the side path going across the bridge. So we have to deal with that still.
I'm really surprised at the roundabouts.
That
Or
close to,
612 is,
yeah, they put roundabouts on both sides. I am really surprised too, because that's not something they normally do, but
seems like traffic lights would be a lot cheaper.
I'm not as sold on roundabouts as some people are, but they have made the determination to put roundabouts on 412, 112, wherever feasible to put them in, so that's what we got.
Well, the Elm Springs Police Department's making a lot of money off of the one there on Elm Springs Road.
Not sure they can do that, but they are nonetheless, yeah. I think you have to go to the next one, because this doesn't go any further than that
Yeah,
intersection right there.
fighting this mouse.
And we can just look at the other one really quickly. It affects going on up past Wagon Wheel and what's the corn maze been called?
Oh, I'm on 12, the
Ribbon.
Blue Ribbon, Blue
Yeah,
Ribbon,
Blue
yeah,
Ribbon, where they're,
It's a nursery now.
yeah, well, they're putting the corn maze back, and they've got, no, they, in the future, it's not there right now, but yes, they're supposed to be putting the corn maze.
They've
work in
excavated all that.
progress.
Yeah,
All that land's been excavated
yeah,
for the nursery.
oh, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
They moved a lot of dirt, that's,
See if I can get some more of that to the north.
there's not any more after that, it's as far as it goes. You gotta go to the other one.
This is the other one.
Oh, this gives you the alternative through, should give you the alternative through Elm Springs. Okay, if you go a little bit further to the north, you can see it comes to the
West side. of Elm
to the
Springs.
east side of
East
Elm
side,
Springs
okay.
with 2 roundabouts.
Okay.
Instead of putting it on the main street. And okay, so the public meeting, I think there's one tomorrow night. It's a virtual online. You want to go on and make comments. It's kind of strange the way it works because they won't answer any of your questions. They allow you to make comments and that's it. So okay. This improvement is going to have an effect on how we look at land use development on that side with the increase in that. We're going to kind of, those are the kinds of things you'll get that you can look at yourself when you look at these. So tonight we're going to talk about commercial land uses and land use goals for commercial.
Just for our purposes, if we want to refer back to the last time this was gone over, I threw these in here just so that way we would have kind of something to refer back to as we're trying to move forward, how we want to adjust and kind of where things are currently.
We're anticipating this being a whole new way to present it in a document that has pictures and explanations that goes with it. that can be an online version. We could do some printed copies. So the land use, the commercial land use goals are not really changing very much, but we talked about the need to talk about neighborhood commercial centers and maybe more information about community commercial centers or regional commercial centers. So I think that's really where we need to upgrade and have a little bit more information about those. I think, Shannon, you're the one that asked about neighborhood commercial centers, and kind of what I'm proposing, and we'll send this to you as well, that we set up some standards about how often they can be. My first comment was that they need to be at the corner of an intersection of an arterial or collector street, and we only have one on that intersection. We don't have a neighborhood commercial center on every corner. That's something we.
You wouldn't really have them. You wouldn't really have them on roundabouts, would you?
Well, I think that's something we have to deal with, because we're putting in so many roundabouts. I mean, let's talk about some areas where we think we would want a neighborhood commercial center and what that would look like.
First of all, when you're saying that, what are you thinking about when you say neighborhood commercial center?
Well, I'm thinking about one that has a spacing between a mile and a mile, 1 to 1.5 to 2 miles between them. So
Page are you on there?
I'm on page 3. Yeah,
Pull it
okay.
over.
But I mean, what does the actual development look like?
Well, we could have
Or are you talking about zoning?
offices.
You're talking about a zoning?
Well, we'll have to create some kind of zoning. I think we get into mixed use, we'll talk about that
Okay.
too. But could we have, neighborhood services type, a daycare,
Tenants.
offices and those kind of things that you would use in the neighborhood. The idea is to create something that you could walk to, that you wouldn't have to drive to.
So is it, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So is it more, Patty, about kind of creating a lot of mixed use land, almost mixed use? I hear the term mixed use residential, but mixed use purposes like combining residential, commercial. So to kind of create like a little hub of,
Yeah.
I guess, community activity.
Yeah, and I'm proposing that it not be any larger than a 15-acre tract, and that the maximum amount of buildings on that would be 150,000 square feet. Things like a bank, an office, a small restaurant, a daycare facility,
In front of Harbor, basically.
right, that kind of stuff, yeah. On an intersection now, if you look at Jean George Boulevard, you look at 265 is a little bit different. You look at 64th Street, you look at 40th Street, 48th Street, things like that. Locations that would have lower density development away from that intersection, but you provide some neighborhood services at that area. Now, Shannon, do you have some ideas on what you think it should look like?
Say that again, Patsy.
Do you have something in mind, what you think a neighborhood commercial center should look like, or its size, or what it
Yeah.
should be?
So what I was thinking would be like, something that a neighborhood could benefit from, like what you said, like a restaurant or a daycare, or maybe a laundry facility, or a small convenience type store, maybe not a large grocery store, but a small convenience type. That's kind of what I was thinking.
The question comes up, could something like Come and Go or Casey's be on one of those neighborhood centers, or are they really more of a community center?
Well, that brings in a lot of traffic because those usually have gas stations. That is kind of a neighborhood thing, but I guess we would have to think about how much traffic we would want in these neighborhood, because like a Casey's or a Come and Go bring in a lot of traffic. And I don't know, is that something we want?
I mean, I've seen it a couple times in Atlanta, kind of in the Cumming area. It's like really, like, I guess I would call it small boutique commercial development. Like you said, Patsy, like a small restaurant, maybe like an ice cream. I'm thinking like an ice cream shop, like a tutoring, a place where your kids could get tutoring, like a mathnasium or something like that. I've seen them as large as having like a YMCA kind of in the front of one of these larger developments. A very small like mom and pop convenience store without gas, meaning you walk in and you can buy like chips or like small stuff, things that a family when they get there, when they get home, they basically can kind of like stay home and stay in their community, and kind of serve most of their needs. Is how I've seen it probably done the best, and where it invokes community to kind of come out, like maybe a little playground or something like that, by the ice cream shop, that kind of stuff is what I've seen it done well with.
And that you could walk to when you got home if you wanted to go get ice cream or something like that after. So I personally think a community center, which would be the next step up, would be something where you would put a Come and Go or a Casey's, because like we said, they bring traffic in for a larger area than those kind of things. So Alma Springs Road and 40th Street, if Casey's on that corner, you go on down to Come and Go and all that. That would be more of a community center type, or when you get out to 49, it becomes regional. But if you wanted to develop some kind of a neighborhood service, could you do that at Falcon, across the street from the school or something like that, to have a neighborhood center in that area?
So would the neighborhood center be a freestanding plan is what you're thinking?
It could be a retrofit of something that's there. Either way, I'm just trying to put some initial thoughts and goals about what we want, and then we're going to have to kneel down to figure out how we make this work and what kind of areas we want. We don't want them on every corner.
Well, so can I ask what's the problem we're trying to solve?
We're trying to get neighborhood or smaller commercial activities in neighborhoods where you don't have to drive across town to get things that you might need in the evening.
What we might call an O1 right now, but that it would be more than an O1, because O1's only your home office type thing. But this,
Right.
okay.
It could be something expanded beyond that. It could even be a C1, which is neighborhood commercial. The
So
kinds of activities that could go into a
C1, yes, right.
which is neighborhood commercial, which is offices, which is small restaurants with no drive-in facilities, which is a cleaners or a daycare. Daycares are always real on the line because they create a traffic issue. But yet people like to have them close to their homes too.
I wonder about putting it on an intersection. If you put it on an intersection, you're basically saying we want the cars to come by. If you put it not at an intersection, it can become much more neighborhood
Okay.
centric. With the cars.
The one I've seen, I apologize, don't mean to talk. Sorry, Ben, did you finish? Because Zoom.
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
And then I'll yield because I think someone was going to say something. The one I've seen, and you guys can Google it if you want to. And I've visited there several times. It's called Vickery Village Shops and Restaurants. Now this is in Atlanta, so it's a little bit of a bigger neighborhood, but it's not necessarily.
What was that name again?
Vickery Village Shops and Restaurants. So I mean, this is like I would say kind of expanded. This will probably be at a higher. It may not fit, so it's in a bigger city, but it's kind of inset into the, almost like the frontage of a residential development, and then residential follows it. But it kind of can give you an idea of what it could look like. Again, this one has a YMCA in it, so it's a little bit larger than probably what we're thinking. But that's how I've experienced it firsthand, and it's pretty when you and think about Atlanta. From a trap, once you kind of get home, you don't want to leave because it took you a while to get back home, especially if you're coming from the city. So these have kind of been designed with that in mind. And so you can kind of see that you don't really, for most major things, it doesn't replace a grocery store per se, but for a lot of things you can kind of stay self-contained. That's just a one that I've experienced and seen, and it works very well.
So Ben, are you saying that what we would actually allow to go into the corner at the intersection in front on both the streets might have to have less of a traffic impact than something else? Maybe a park on the corner or something that I was envisioning everything would be activated inside this neighborhood center, and you'd have 2 access points, so you don't have people driving through.
So those are kind of things we'd have to still talk about.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the opposite. So what I'm saying is a neighborhood center should serve the community behind it. And really its primary focus should be for people to walk to in the evenings with the ability to stop in on your way home. But the point of putting it at major intersections like that is that's where the cars are. So you're, in my opinion, you're fighting an uphill battle. Every corner of every one of those intersections is going to want to be a gas station or an impulse buy type place. So we could say that it should be neighborhood related, but in reality, what I've seen, they've always turned their back on the neighborhood. They're worried about the cars.
Good point. I wasn't thinking about that.
I think I agree with that. I think the
Yeah.
market dictates that
Yeah.
more than we can.
Yeah.
I also,
So a neighborhood center wouldn't necessarily have to be at an intersection.
It almost.
I think it's better mid-block.
Okay.
I would agree. I think mid block kind of inset into the residential area where it serves the community behind it the most. Now, again, I've seen it where people actually do stop, but parking is limited, and it's more the most convenient use for it is when folks from the neighborhood are coming out.
Okay, these are the kinds of discussions we need to have.
It's gonna have to have it's gonna have to have a pretty substantial density of population as far as houses that.
Yeah.
It serves. That's why, I mean, what you guys are talking about is exactly what is in front of Harper. I mean, 'cause it's not on the intersection. On the intersection is a gas station
Mhm.
and Harps. Before that, but everything is really facing towards the neighborhood.
I mean, we had that with Tacos for Life. They wanted to face Harbor. They didn't want to face
412.
412. Okay. Okay, we can work. So then the next step up would be a commercial center that's a community center that would be the next step up where you would be wanting people to drive by and stop there.
Now, one other thing to include in this neighborhood center or commercial center is pickup locations. It's new, but it's growing incredibly fast as far as where people do have things that go to a destination. So something else to think about, because that in itself can drive traffic.
Right. So would you want that in a community center or a regional center where you have to go pick up? I'm thinking about Walmart being a regional center. with
Could be a
pickup.
neighborhood as well.
It's true. Okay.
the other thing I think we should just highlight before we go forward about this is that our parking requirements are going to create a challenge for that too.
True.
Because if you are trying to design something that, especially infill in a neighborhood to support the neighborhood, and you've got to have 12 parking spaces per unit, it goes counter to trying to build a walkable, nice little shop. So I think our own parking requirements, if not changed, will make that just not feasible.
Just comes down to what's in form-based code. We want the parking requirements where you can park on the street, or it is more pedestrian oriented than having to create all those parking spaces.
Well, it is interesting what you bring up as far as, especially for the neighborhood centers. You want that to be, you want to incentivize that and be able to, you have more that you can develop because you don't have the parking requirements. in some of those.
And I think location, I've just been thinking a lot about, how can we try to strategically do it so that things can be shared? Again, like these churches run into issues every time they want to go because the code says they need X number of spaces, but they only need them twice a week or 3 times a week. So being able to, allocate something like this maybe next to a church or something where they can share parking or things like places where you have excess parking or, city-owned lots or, those kind of things.
Okay. This is, I think, the major change we need to make in our commercial goals and how we handle commercial development, because this is a major change from what we've been doing. So you're gonna have to get,
What's the
you
major
gotta
change?
remember, I wrote this quite some time ago.
The major change is,
Going to neighborhood centers and allowing it to go in different locations. Our land use plan pretty much shows commercial major
Yeah.
arterials and collector streets. Are we looking at, and will the land use plan actually identify areas where we think neighborhood commercial needs to be? And so that's something we really need to talk about when we get through all of the policies and the goals and procedures. where do we think we want those on the land use map itself? Can you click over to the?
I think there's several locations, both on the east and west sides on it, that are not developed, but there's major housing developments going on.
Yeah.
let's, let's talk about those on 56th Street that we've got Noah's Landing and it was Wildcat, but whatever it is now. Deer Creek, all of those subdivision going in there. And then, we just rezoned the property just to the south of that as a MF 16. So along 56th Street, north of Elm Springs Road, do we need some neighborhood commercial up in that area? Where would it be? Is it out closer to the park? Is it up in that area somewhere like that? That's an area that's going to develop in the next few years. How do we make all that work? We've got the regional community, the regional commercial center with Walmart and everything that's going in it at the major intersection of Elm Springs Road and 48th Street and Elm Springs Road and Oak Grove Road. So we've got things that people are going to drive to. So the next step down is, do we go to some kind of neighborhood up in that area around Shaw Park or something? And then you go on out to the other side and you get to Marchant Carey Smith intersection. Is that an intersection where we're going to have more regional commercial type stuff? We do have a rezoning request coming up right now on the northwest corner of that intersection. Will be it next month. And they're looking at putting a bank on the corner, some of that kind of activity right on Elm Springs or 112 and doing some trades and services type things right behind it. So we're getting to see some of that already.
I'm still amazed that they're building banks.
I was about to ask the same question, like I hope it's a regional headquarters, because I can't imagine you're gonna build another individual small branch on
Yeah,
it.
but go look at the.
Aren't they making like a comeback or something?
Well, now
Because
this
people-
Arvest drive-through is the busiest in all of Arvest Bank Group.
This one here.
Yes, the one on.
I would like to have another one, so I don't have to go to this one, or the one on 412, or the one at Elm Springs Road, because you can't get through there.
No, I mean, I think it brings up a good point. I mean, banks are just,
You don't think we need a bank on every corner like we've been working on for the last several many years?
It's
Yeah,
better
like on
than-
every corner.
better than the used car lot.
it's, yeah.
The market's kind of driving that down. right?
Yeah.
We know how you feel about that one.
But yeah, I do think is on a corner like that, it just seems like you might be better served by having multiple uses instead of one single use. But, again, because if you're gonna have stuff where people are gonna be driving to it, having a corner where you can have two, an entrance and an exit on either side would facilitate more people getting in there.
Remember, my job is to ask questions so you can think about this thing. That's what I do with these. You gotta think about these kind of things and how do we put them on paper?
Can you scroll over to the east side?
Okay.
So the road going up by School of Innovation,
Hilton?
Hilton Road.
Uh-huh.
Hilton Road by the Jean George Ballpark, or
Yeah.
George.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Willie
This
George.
area?
Yeah, Willie
Yeah.
George.
That, to me, is a prime location for a neighborhood type of commercial.
And we do have if you go on out to Haverton and that where the pipe went in there, it has commercial on that corner. The commercial, there is commercial set aside on that corner of Butterfield Coach Road and
Or
Don
even,
Tyson.
or even along Don Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Well,
the
we got
school owns portion of that land on there.
a massive amount of houses going in after the, it's going to need something in that area out there somewhere.
And it's interesting because, where the neighborhood market was built and then the Northwest Medical,
Mhm.
that whole area is really struggling to just have that next level commercial.
Yeah.
So I think that neighborhood piece might be a good fit in some of those areas. I don't know what other people think, so. But I agree with Ben that don't put it on the intersection.
I was waiting for somebody to tell me that. Because,
Well,
I mean, that has always been the standard in the past, you know?
Go ahead, Ben.
I kind of see community commercial on arterials and neighborhood on collector and below.
Yeah,
And stop doing single family up against arterials, because that doesn't make any sense. No one wants to live there after the road gets widened and becomes busy, but we still continue to show them there.
yeah, okay. I think we're all on the same page as far as that's
I
concerned.
agree with that.
Okay. So the areas we show on commercial, which are collectors or arterials and major collectors, we're probably still gonna see some kind of development, regional type commercial stuff in those areas. Along 412, you know, that's, but what we do with it as we step away from it is something we've got to address. Okay,
Yeah, and I think minor collector is where that goes.
yeah. Neighborhood goes on, where that goes on, you mean the neighborhood on minor collectors or?
Yes, neighborhood should be kind of on
Okay.
minor collectors, out of the fray, if you will, just a little bit.
Right, okay,
So is Hilton Road fit that category?
can you go, I'm glad you're manipulating all this, not me, can you go to the Master Street plan?
I was just trying to get down here to Hilton
Yeah.
before I do anything. It should be ready.
Maybe I'll get a new mouse out of this.
We'll see in a second if I remember correctly, but I think Butterfield is a major collector, and I think Hilton's a arterial, and Hilton is a major collector.
I would think it'd be the reverse.
I don't know if I made it angry, it's hiding.
That's okay. I mean, you get the,
Yeah, we can go back and look at all that stuff and put that stuff, yeah, and put all that stuff together so that we can kind of how that all overlays together. Okay,
now, what about up near our newly annexed area?
okay, we've got the whole area around Bethel Heights that we need to talk about too. Let's give up on the master street plan, go back to the land use plan since it's not cooperating.
Because there's nothing up in
Yeah.
that area.
Mhm.
So, where,
Back to the land.
Are y'all
use plan.
familiar with the term food desert?
Oh,
You've
yeah.
heard that, right?
We've been talking about that for several years.
So that's that, I mean, that's what I think about when I think of, that's something that this could help.
Yeah,
That this could help solve, is making it possible for
Right.
these small, you know,
Fresh
type of,
food,
yeah,
fresh
yeah,
foods,
yeah,
vegetables,
totally.
Fruits, yeah.
I mean, this
You're
one that
right.
opened up downtown now, the Maple Market
yes.
is a game changer for us, because there's
Exactly.
nothing here. to-
Exactly.
You know, I mean, yeah, we go to Harps or, you know, drive to Harps or drive to Walmart, but yeah, I mean, that's a game changer to just go grab eggs from down here and not have
Which
to.
road were we looking for again?
so Butterfield Coach is a major collector and
Hilton is.
Hilton is a minor collector.
Yeah.
Right there, isn't that what we're looking at?
I believe that's these two.
Yeah.
So Ben, you were saying on the neighborhood commercial to be on a minor collector?
Yeah, I think neighborhood commercial belongs on the yellow roads, and community commercial belongs on the pink and red roads.
Right, right. And not necessarily just at the intersections. Okay,
We're not gonna get enough land if we only allow it at the intersections.
okay.
I think you might have some community commercial at the intersections of minor collectors, depending on which minor collectors they are.
Let's look at the area up around Bethel Heights that we've added in. Because that's an area we're gonna have to look at it to see what we think needs to happen up there. 265 and Apple Blossom.
Add some commissioners.
My wife went to that market this morning. And, she said, I hope they keep the eclectic guy on.
Oh, it's
At
great.
the Hoka Market.
And let me tell you that.
Or the Maple Market.
Maple Market
Oh,
and the
yes.
sandwiches are delicious.
Okay, so this is an area we need to talk about, but if we use those same goals, we've got to determine, first of all, Apple Blossom is a major collector. 265 is an arterial. Oak Street, I think, is a minor collector. And I don't think we have a whole lot else identified up in that area.
So Dixieland is what?
Dixieland, I think, will come in as a minor collector.
So Dixieland to me seems like a logical neighborhood.
Dixieland and Apple Blossom. Even, I mean, when you get down to Wagon Wheel, it all depends on what happens with 412, how that goes across through there, but unless we get a signal there, it's gonna be a nightmare.
Both the bike trail accessibility, the corporations that are there,
Mhm,
the residential,
mhm.
you're gonna pull into the city.
I think the west side is a little bit easier than the east side. What do we do with the east side?
TBD.
Yeah.
I just need to go, I feel like I need to go see it.
Until it
I don't- I have
gets sewer
no-
service up there, we're not.
It's.
I don't know
tricky. Yeah,
anything
you should go
about
up
that
there. It's
area.
tricky.
We need to spend some time looking around up in that area.
Well, if we're talking purely land use, the way that we had approached it last work session was a lot of this was kind of assumed blue for industrial, given the proximity to these rail yards and what is already blue and through here
But
to connect these things.
that to me is why it's so important. When our last work session we had, we talked about industrial and that we've got to have some newer definitions associated with it. There actually could be a good complement with some of the defined industrial with a neighborhood.
A warehouse operation rather than a manufacturing type industrial use. Or
Or,
a distribution center as opposed to.
well,
manufacturing.
or you could have as far as more of the custom wood
Sure.
manufacturer. I mean, some of those
Yeah.
craftsmen building furniture type of scenarios or whatever.
Then you have that residential development that's already occurred off of OR Road, all the way up through there. You know, some kind of transition between that and where we're looking at those industrial areas, and then 264, what happens with 264? Is the intersection at 264 and 265 a location for some, you know, got relocated, is that a location for some community commercial center at that location? So you look at this side of town, there's not a lot. When you go north on 265, there's nothing out there.
And we talked at one point about actually making this or including this in subdivision requirements and or PUDs, that because I also think about, like, you know, actually connecting it to the neighborhood, you know, where you enter the neighborhood, like in Harbor, you enter and then there's commercial, instead of all this stuff entering and exiting out off of the main road, creating traffic issues. And then it's not really even connected to the people in the neighborhoods behind, right? It's just this.
That's a good point.
There, and then that I saw on, and maybe, I'm sure you just grabbed this from somewhere, but it was 150,000 square feet and 15 acres seems quite high for what we're talking
Well,
about.
3 or 4 years ago, when I wrote this the first time, it didn't seem like it was such a big deal because we were building retail operations that were this size. That has all changed. We're not seeing retail operations being built like they were
Mhm.
before. So those numbers are probably gonna have to change.
Yes.
This was all pre-COVID stuff.
Gotta make a flight path for those drones.
Yep, so we gotta go back and look at that some too.
CMP Ridge.
So what would be some, I
and
mean,
landings.
somebody's gonna have to give me some ideas of what would be an adequate size for a neighborhood center. We're setting a minimum, not a, if it's a neighborhood center, does it have to be a certain size? Does it have to have a combination of 2 or more uses, or, can it just be a small grocery store on the corner?
I mean, I think it's hard to say initially. I guess I would say I think someone else has made this point. Density will probably drive some of that. So I think maybe it's something associated with density, and then at that point, I feel like we would be probably assisting businesses to understand kind of what we're looking for. So they'd have. I mean, because I would assume businesses will want to do some density work themselves and understand how much business they'd have, but I would assume it'd have to be somewhat associated with density.
And then it comes back to the idea of a mixed use where you have that kind of neighborhood commercial on the bottom floor and you have residential above it. We still have to address that issue. That's gonna have to come in here somewhere, because it's how we get some of this to work in neighborhood centers. It's that residential that goes with the neighborhood commercial type stuff too.
I don't think we're very good at predicting what will go in a particular site. So I don't think we should try to do that. I don't think we should set a minimum size. I don't think we should say it has to be 2 uses instead of 1.
Okay, let's,
I approach it more like we approach the form-based code, where the design of the building and some general guidance about uses is better than saying we want. I think we'll do it, and I don't think it'll turn out that way.
so really, we're talking about expanding the form-based code area out of the downtown more than where it is now.
I just think for me, it checks the boxes of what we're saying right now that we want to see. We want to see something that fits the neighborhood, that's walkable, that you can go down and get a few things from. So
Right now, our only option to get that kind of mix of uses with a PUD, and you gotta have 10 acres, and we know that's not workable.
But we had talked about
We've got to
reducing
come up,
that.
yeah, we've got to come up with some other way to handle that. And does a PUD have to have more than just one type of use? Or
I
can
like
we
the
have?
idea of, allowing residential on the upper floors and neighborhood on the bottom floor as an enticement. If you want to do a multiple, like you talked about this Vickery in Atlanta, that has to be done by a big corporation, probably by a large subdivider who builds a large, like Harbor Meadows, and can plan for it. Otherwise, they're going to reserve outlots on the main road, and they're going to do their subdivision, and then you're just going to get a hodgepodge of individual little businesses, is what probably going to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, let's talk, Harbor Meadows was ahead of its time. In some ways.
It
It is
absolutely
mixed
was
housing.
for a few ideas. But if we
Yeah.
allowed some residences on top, that keeps the scale of the building in line with
Right.
the neighborhood, and it entices someone to want to build that because he can increase his housing density.
and you can
I do-
and you get more compatible uses with residential on the bottom, because obviously they have to be compatible with the neighboring zoning, so they have to be compatible with residential up top.
I do like the idea of having I agree. I like that for having residential and commercial kind of combined, one for one top and bottom one, however that works out. I also think I would think it would be an attraction for millennials. There's a couple, whenever they do converting like big textile places, they always kind of do it something like that as well.
So is that an incentive we put into the zoning so that you can increase your density if you use that type of a mixed development? So it becomes an incentive for people to look at it as neighborhood centers with that kind of development?
I
Or
think
do we
so.
establish where it's gonna happen?
I think it
I
helps a
think
lot.
you can add the residences to the top and not penalize them at all. So if they do a neighborhood
Yeah.
commercial right outside the neighborhood, they can, all the residential on top, they get for free.
Doesn't affect their density, okay, I see.
And that would be the neighborhood commercial.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Well, do we use the existing C1 as a neighborhood commercial and we make changes to it, or do we create something different?
well, the reason I was getting ready to ask this question on here is on Don Tyson. So we had a lot of people that came in opposition of a multifamily at the corner of Don Tyson and Powell.
Oh, yeah.
For infills like that, to me, that becomes a logical
Perfect.
for that.
It's the incentive we use to make that happen.
Kevin, that area you just mentioned, that would have been a perfect example
Yeah,
of infill. It's small enough. It has a look. It feeds that neighborhood concept.
Yeah.
It keeps it small, keeps it tidy. That's a perfect example.
I think we're getting somewhere with this.
Incentives work, we know incentives work better
Mhm.
than regulation usually. You get people to do what we like them to do.
that's
I don't
right.
know that you call it an incentive in the code. It's just in the code and then we have to bring it to their
Right,
attention.
yeah.
Right,
I
right.
agree.
I don't know that we call it an incentive. I'm like you, we just put it there, and when you meet with people saying, well, this is what you can do if you think about doing this kind of stuff. We do that now. We try to direct people to go that. We talked to one this morning that's just north of that MF16, and I think by the time we get finished, we're gonna have something that works out really good and a whole new look for that area with a mixture of housing. But we're gonna have to do it with a PUD right now, because that's all we got to work with, so.
I mean, I think the PUD is a good place for us to decrease, because we have more control in a PUD than we have on anything else. So why wouldn't we, kind of open that up, at least to see 10 acres is a lot. I mean,
10 acres is a
nowadays
lot.
it wasn't in 95, but 10 acres today is a lot.
If you look at if you look at back as far as the recent PUDs that we've approved, every one of them have scaled back as far as what they're initially working on.
Yeah.
So they bought the entire land, the whole thing is in a PUD, however, they're only developing their first portion of that, so why not make it smaller in that whole piece?
And I mean, that's the thing, like in certain spots, 2 acres, you can fit a lot in 2 acres. Especially if you're doing small
When you go up.
mixed use like this, you can't fit a lot of.
And building up is becoming more attractive.
Yeah.
Instead of out.
Okay. Okay, so I think we kind of all agree on this is the direction we want to go with the commercial. Now I gotta figure out how to get it on a piece of paper. We're gonna send this to you, and you all start looking through this and see if there's aspects of it that you like, because there's a lot more in here. I'm gonna sit here and read this all to you. I can read it.
I don't think initially, without thinking on it longer, I don't think a new zoning is the way I think we should go.
Okay.
Because I think we've got, in my opinion, plenty as it is. And I think if anything, we should start combining and do a little bit of moving around then,
Yeah.
because we have stuff that's already C1.
Mhm.
So why, I don't want to create another step for somebody to then have to go, like, if we want to see development, I think we should just kind of stick with that and just revise it.
Our bigger issue is use units is so broad in certain
Mhm.
commercial.
Right, yeah.
That's what needs to be
That's
addressed.
going back to the idea where form-based code works better, because we don't really worry about what the use unit is, depending on what it looks like. From this side of the fence, it works a lot easier. Type thing. So let's see if we can kind of blend some of that together.
I think that's yeah. 'Cause
Okay. Okay. Unless somebody's got something else to add, I think we've got all we can work on for right now. You want to do your really quick
that's fine.
of what you learned on your trip, and let's go through that really quick, and then we'll call it an evening, and we'll send this presentation to you so you can start looking at just the ideas, and keep in mind, this is just thoughts put on a piece of paper, so we have a place to start.
Just real quick, the $87 million surgery center UAMS, is that is that supposed to be like south of the ballpark?
It's across to the east, there's the 2 houses on the corner
Uh-huh.
to the east. That's 6 acres across the front of that is going to be split off, and it'll be right behind that.
So south of between that and Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yes. It's only that section that,
Where the old golf course used to be right there.
no, that's another hospital. That's not UAMS. The rezoning that we did the other night is for another hospital that I can't tell you who it is yet, but that's what they're with. It will go in conjunction with UAMS. So we will have that $84 million UAMS campus and then another one right to the east of it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, back in June, I'm sure everybody recalls, Austin and I went on a trip. As we all know, conferences haven't really been a thing for the last year and a half or so. And so we made our own. So the first leg was the morning of June 8th. We took off from right smack dab in the middle of downtown Springdale, went up to Joplin. And so all of this was planned out several months in advance. And so we had touched base with planners across the entirety of the trip to be able to make sure that we could have some time with everybody and kind of see what they're doing, what sort of interesting stuff is going on. And it started as a form-based code trip, but it kind of blossomed into, okay, well, Joplin in particular has a historic district. So what goes into that? Springfield, as we'll talk about in just a moment, they're looking into having a form-based code in their ordinance. So this is actually Joplin City Hall. It is immaculate on the inside. The first level, it honestly reminded me of whenever I was a kid. I would go into Chicago with my grandfather and see some of these very, very cool first quarter of the century type buildings, and the architecture inside and the design work was awesome. The planner that took us around, he's actually from Bentonville. He grew up in Bentonville, went to Bentonville High School, and then on to Missouri State for his degree in planning. And so he took us around just the main drag there where they are most focused on just making sure that this area maintains its historical feel, and a lot of discussion of how that works in terms of facades. They work, I believe he had said, they had adopted all of the rule book of the Department of the Interior in terms of all of the work in this heritage zone. So it made their job a lot tougher because they have much stricter rules. And
How long
then he
ago
was-
did they put all this in place?
Oh, that I don't remember. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Just wonder, it looks really nice.
No, it was really,
If it was
really
10 years
cool.
ago or
Yeah.
2.
They've done a great job.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see a lot of the new businesses popping up in these places, whether it's a bar, whether it's a boutique clothing store type thing. And it was really well done. And that was a park, a little pocket park, maybe an acre or so. And it was one of those that from across the street that actually we walked on much of the time is back running along the right side of the screen there, and it just draws you in there. It was very welcoming. There's seating, there's a fountain, there's a statue, there's a lot of shade trees. You could stand under the tree and the temperature was 65. You stand right next to the shade and it was immediately up to 85. And it really, it was a perfect example of how if we really think about these things, we can make some cool parks just like theirs. So from Joplin, we went over to Springfield, Missouri, and they kind of threw the house at us. It was really awesome because we're kind of interested to see how many people they would have as kind of their crew. And we walk up, and I guess here I'll jump ahead a little bit. We walk into a room with about 7 people, all involved in their planning and development staff. And they had PowerPoints ready for us, and we chipped away for every bit of 3.5 hours, just talking about what they're looking to do with their comprehensive land use plan, what it is that we can provide them in terms of knowledge and expertise in terms of form-based code as initially when I had started speaking to them, it was the beginning of the summer they were hoping to implement it. But at this point, they're looking more towards the
Oh, really?
fall. So we were able to really, somehow it all fell together very well throughout the whole trip. This was the hotel we stayed in. It was actually a Masonic lodge back in the day. So a lot of the architecture, a lot of the imagery that they have in there, and they even have Masonic symbolism and things like that that they use in order to keep things interesting and kind of keep the tone of the building that it had throughout time.
They've got a lot more older building stock than I would think that, we don't, it kills me. We don't have any.
So this was a look at kind of their land use plan in terms of just what they're hoping to do with things. That was a big poster board that they got out
You
for
see
us
lots
while
of
we were-
yellow,
Yeah.
so it looks like ours.
So traditional neighborhood
It's a
zoning.
traditional,
Yeah.
And there
Why
are
would
quite
you
a
say
few.
so?
Did they say why they're pushing their form-based code implementation back?
I think it was, that was a weird thing. They had really started working on their comprehensive land use plan and discussions of form-based code before the world ended. And they had all over the wall of that building that we were meeting in. They had purchased that, I believe, from somebody in order to be able to use for these
For
meetings.
their charrettes? and stuff?
Just before everything shuts down. And so on the wall that's to the left, so where that stop sign is, the wall immediately back there, you can see all of the newspaper clippings from right before everything ended, basically all the end last, say, 3 months of 2019 into the beginning of 2020, and then it was just bam, done. And so they're really trying to do everything they can now that the world is kind of opening up there to get the ball rolling again and now start implementing what they were intending to have really in place quite a bit of time back.
Are they just focusing on downtown or are they looking at taking it further?
Form-based code?
Yeah.
That I will, I can reach out to them and get you some of those PowerPoint.
I just wonder how many other folks are trying to push their form-based code out. I haven't heard.
Not a lot.
Not
When
many.
you're gonna get to Normal, Illinois here, and they have form-based code for their entire city, and they haven't had it very long, and they're one of the very few
Yeah, they're the ones that
that
if you
has the
look up
entire city.
optional form-based code, that's
Yeah.
the first town that comes out.
Yeah.
So the one picture that we threw in here, because one little aspect that we didn't like about some of their streetscape, no trees.
Oh, yeah.
It's just sidewalks, and that's not the entirety of town, but that was just right there near where we had stayed. So Springfield, Missouri to St. Louis, Missouri. We were lucky enough to get a spot where the old International Fur Exchange was. I believe that was Drury, just to the, was that southeast of the old Capitol and just to the west of the arch that's looking out our window. So we had a really, really cool location to be able to branch out from as we looked around town. Got a chance to go to the old, well, it is old, but it is still the City Hall. Really cool building, really awesome Gothic type architecture. That was about the best picture that I could get, was an attempt to kind of jump out in traffic and get a panoramic view of the whole thing.
Yeah, you're a brave soul.
Or just stupid, whichever. So this was one of the more cool pieces of art that they had in there. This was right inside of the door, or the front door of City Hall, and that's St. Louis in 1840. It's changed a little.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah.
This is looking down into the intersection between, on the right there is the Arch Park, and then the old Capitol there on the left. And then here's the building that houses their planning and community development stuff. Very
So you're
second half of the 20th century.
You were in Clayton.
Yeah,
Everybody else gets in the nice old Gothic building and then planning goes in the,
So here's
We're always what's left
The
over.
the
It goes in
FBI
the-
building.
yeah, exactly.
their development plan that they had starting back in about 2014. One thing that whenever we got in there, I couldn't help but chuckle. There was a stadium there for a specific football team that used to be in St. Louis that they had integrated. So as soon as I saw that, I started looking for dates and things on.
You know what's going there now,
What's going on?
soccer.
Oh, is it? Well, it ended up working out.
Yeah.
Cause
We
then,
moved to,
and
where they moved to?
LA.
The expansion, yeah, and then they're getting an expansion team for soccer.
And so that was really interesting, because I remember, what was that, 5, 6 years ago, traveling through St. Louis the morning after they had said that they were gonna move the team, and they let them say everything other than the F word on the radio that day. People were not happy. So, and the planners obviously didn't like it either, because
That's a
it
federal building.
messed up their plans. So yeah, there's our federal building. It was pretty cool.
So just real quick on this picture, those buildings to the left,
Mhm.
the old one and then the real tall one,
Mhm.
those are former AT&T buildings. Those are
Well, there's
completely,
still the AT&T sign on the shorter.
they're completely vacant.
Are they really?
Really?
Yes, they are.
Wow.
So then the next day, we were heading out of St. Louis, intending to go straight to Normal, but the traffic along 55, just on the east side of Springfield, was not playing nicely. I grew up in central Illinois, so I knew, okay, well, I can bypass this, take 72 east and then 51 north around Decatur. And that's my hometown, so it worked out all right. So we ended up calling ahead saying, hey, we're swinging through this direction because the traffic's bad on 55. As your planner in town, we're only gonna have maybe 45 minutes to an hour before we have to head up to Normal. And they said, yeah, by the time you get here, you should be off the phone and out of his meetings. So we got a chance to go in there and check out City Hall. And there is, yeah, that's where they meet for planning as well as city council. It is a very small room that's maybe twice the size of this one.
Did, in St. Louis, did they have, Wi-Fi or, anything like that, that was free and open downtown? Do you know if they had
I
anything
don't
like that or in any
remember.
of the places?
That is a great question. I don't remember.
Just wonder, I know Kansas, I think
That-
it's Kansas City I'm
think so.
thinking of.
That the
that
city
has-
facilitates?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I think it's
don't
Kansas
think
City that I'm thinking of.
I think
Yeah.
Ballpark Village, by the stadium has a pretty wide net of Wi-Fi, but that's about it.
That may be
But it's
correct.
privately managed.
But here's their zoning map. It's pretty simple. I
Mhm.
mean, it's really less than a mile
Mhm.
regardless of which direction you're looking at. And so growing up over here, it's comical to see how much expansion has occurred there, and then the new school and things over here. So it's grown a lot in terms of its geographic area, but I don't know that it has grown in terms of its population. So just an address map to show there where things. have
Yeah, you
been.
can keep all of them on one page.
Yeah. So then, within, like I said, within about an hour, we were heading back on our trip back to Normal. And
That's
so
pretty.
that is the coolest circle roundabout area. It's smack dab in what they call Uptown Normal. And so having gone to Illinois State as an undergrad, it was fun to go back because it was a shock to the senses seeing all of this, because even over the course of the last, say, I guess it's 11 years since I graduated, it has changed night and day in this uptown area especially. And so if you ever check out the CNU website, that's where the picture comes from, is right there. So there's from that clock tower, looking down to the north over the top of that roundabout. And there's looking kind of east northeast. And that is kind of the main drag with everything there and uptown Normal, your bars and restaurants for the most part. There's your theater, which I thought that given the Apollo right down here, it I'd be.
It doesn't look too different, you know, because the height of those buildings kind of
Mhm.
matches ours. I mean, it's not too different.
they're using on-street to
Mhm.
create more restaurant area and that kind of stuff.
I've seen Fayetteville, I saw in the paper maybe that Fayetteville was starting to
They
do
did
that
on
too.
Dixon Street, so.
And so, back in the distance behind there, I believe it's the next intersection. Once you cross that intersection, you're on to ISU's campus. So it is a very, very tight relationship between the city and the university. There's Austin and Mercy. Mercy is their city planner. She was awesome. She gave us a tour of everything in that uptown area. We ran into some of the better known developers and got to go through some of their buildings that they did.
Oh, cool.
It was really cool. We were very grateful.
And they're not as far along with their form-based management.
No, but I mean, I will say honestly, there's some cool stuff. This is one of the buildings that Mercy was telling us, people kind of had an icky taste in their mouth about, because they said it just looked like a forced antique style frontages of buildings. And I had to tell her, well, I mean, I don't think that bottom is offensive. I will say that the top layer where it's obviously residential is
Where you've got all your dryer vents
kind of,
popping out of the
yeah,
Looks more like a
bland and
prison.
wall.
and not really done to
Yeah.
to my liking, but I think generally it looks good.
I've seen worse,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
So then, this is just Constitution Trail. I believe a lot of the same people that were involved with the trail here, or at least some of them were involved there. And so we got a
People for
chance to,
lives.
what's that?
People for lives.
And so we ran from downtown at that square, which is just a block from where we stayed, all the way up to that dot at the top back. So it was a good little run in 95-degree plus about 90% humidity. So, but we got to see it, and it was really cool because most of the trail until you get to the very north end is canopied by the trees. And so that's something that as our trail system here grows and ages, I hope that we will do just that and plant as many trees as possible around there. They have a cool map of uptown right there at the start of the trail. From that is just the other side of the road from the roundabout. And that's pretty much where it is, right there at the top, where the dot is at Boulevard at the top there. That's where that sign is located. Here's the kind of a look at the tree canopy at the very beginning of the trail. You can see it's very similar to what we've got here. Here's that next intersection to the north, and you can see how they went about providing a light not only for over here for these guys, but also for us utilizing the trail.
I
And
don't want one of those
so yeah, here's
trail
a
lights.
what?
I don't want those trail stop
Yeah.
lights in Springfield.
So here, yeah, they've even got the timer on them, and you can see just looking north how busy that trail was.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are people on bikes, there are people walking, there are people running, and that did not change the entirety of the route north until you got out of town and it was 95 and there was no shade. So, yeah, then finally wrapped up the trip on that Friday, came all the way back, and got here, what, about 4:15? So, yeah, it was a cool trip. We got so many opportunities to meet with, talk to, learn from, and teach ourselves. So it was fun. and-
Something you don't go when you go to
Yeah.
CMU.
No, exactly.
That's
And
cool.
so, no, we're very grateful because of the autonomy that Patsy allows us. That we got the chance to kind of put something cool together, and maybe we'll get a chance next year to do something similar, going in a different direction.
Maybe host some of them down here.
With any luck, and that
They
was.
They did offer that all the
Yeah,
way.
great.
Come back this way and
So, yeah, I guess it's almost 6:45, so I
I
guess
think
we
that's what
can
we've got.
get everybody rolling and.
Any
having some
other,
dinner.
any other topics anybody else want to bring up that we need to be working on? Next time we'll go over mixed use and Then we gotta get into residential
Yeah.
goals and, I mean, the really bigger one to deal with is, we save that till last.
One of the nuggets that will come up in the PowerPoint that we're gonna be sending you that we showed the vast majority of earlier. Parking garages, because that's gonna be something that as we increase density, as we talk about residential and on top of commercial, that's something that we need to really start talking about, brainstorming and thinking what we want those things to look like. And so I've got a handful of them and you'll get a picture. And then right behind it, you'll get what city that's from. That way it doesn't sully your mind when you see the name of the city right above it. It immediately makes you think.
I was gonna say,
Something.
if you need some new ones.
Mhm.
There's one right behind my building up in Rogers, it's being built right now next to Pinnacle.
Mhm.
And then the ones that are downtown Bentonville are pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We've had discussions with the mayor about the next bond issue, being able to include some type of parking garages in downtown as part of that. 'Cause I think that's going to be our next big issue. Housing is a big issue, but parking becomes an issue.
We have one parking garage in downtown.
At the hospital. Yeah. Been there forever.
But
And
we
I
can make
ride
one
my
prettier
bicycle
than
to the top of it because there's nobody ever parking in there, so that's an idea.
Park there in hailstorms.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's an issue that we need to talk about. We want to have a parking issue in downtown. Let's figure out before we get to that point, how we can address it as we move forward with the next bond parking too.
And I think we're already cutting it close, so
Yeah,
hopefully
we
we
are.
can get it
Yeah.
figured out.
Well, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody online got anything they want to add?
No, ma'am.
Very much.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
We'll
Have a
see you
good
at the
one.
next meeting. The agenda is not quite as bad as the last meeting.
Not
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
I have to head to Rogers, my daughter's